So let me just talk to you about public relations theory for a minute. We do a study called the Edelman Trust Barometer. We've done it for more than 10 years. And what we see about building reputation has changed profoundly in the last 10 years. And why is that? Well, it's partly because the world's changed. You have dispersion of media, you have dispersion of authority. You see that, in fact, the traditional sources of information, so the CEO of a corporation, the President of the United States, those are the 9th and 10th sources of information in terms of trust, partly because CEOs have disappointed us. Not the two in this room, God knows, but you know, some of your colleagues at other big companies. It's just the way it is. And so who are the new sources of information? Well, interestingly, academics, experts, and a person like yourself. What's happened is that it's moved from traditional sources to non-traditional sources. So the Facebook effect is something very important. So why am I talking about all this? Well, in fact, it informs how we do what we do in the next phase. I also want to tell you that since 2008, it used to be that companies and institutions were trusted because of their performance and because of an outstanding leader. What's changed is, today, organizations that communicate frequently, openly, and honestly achieve a high degree of trust. Transparency matters more than any other factor in gaining trust. Great products and services and transparency. So the how, the why, the what you do all matter equally. It's no longer just who you are. It's not the superstar anymore. It's how the organization communicates. So in that context, I want to just tell you that we have been playing defense for the last 4 or 5 months, since we've been engaged 4.5 months ago. The Sandusky trial, the free report, the NCAA sanctions, all of these have, you know, put us in a position of back foot. And in a sense, all we could do was be responsive in those ways. Now is the time, as Mark said, to make the pivot. And there are going to be days which are going to be tough days. You know, I'm not going to try and gild this for you. You know, the first Sandusky victim and, you know, those kinds of things are just going to be continuous stream. But the key point about reputation management is you cannot go into your tortoise shell and wait for things to change. You have to now go out and begin the hard work of rebuilding the reputation of this great institution. And the reality of the institution has to be coming out because so much of it has been overshadowed by the events. So let me just try to tell you then the go-forward strategy. The strategy depends actually on what we call an inside-out approach. And what we are doing, folks, is we're going to activate the students, the faculty, the alumni, and third-party allies to tell our story. We're going to go from inside out. That is a clear choice, and I think it's the right choice. Second point, we are going to run simultaneous programs on defense and on offense. We have basically just been doing defense, and rightly so again. But the offense part of the program is now being stood up. And some of these are going to be small wins, and they're going to be incremental, but we must begin the process of reputation rebuild. Our messages are as follows. We are a national leader in academics, athletics, and in service. Second, we are vital to the community, the local community, the national community, the global community. Third, we are committed to reform of governance. And we're going to leverage multiple channels. Our goal here is to have, in a sense, a reinforcement across these multiple channels. Paid media, non-paid media, allies, third parties. We have to have a constant repetition of message. Why? Because in today's context, a person has to hear something 5 to 7 times before he or she believes it. To your point about were you informed as a parent or not, it was there once, maybe it was there twice, you needed it 5 or 7 times. That's just the way the world is, because people actually have 8 daily sources of information. That's the statistic today between blogs, Facebook, mainstream media, other things. It's 5 times you have to hear it, at least 7 times. So our program falls into 4 buckets. First is research. We have to message test in order to go out with that which is going to work. And remember, you've got quite different constituencies. So that which works in the external world must coordinate well with that which we're talking inside. So we're going to talk to key audiences with messages. Second, and by the way, we're also going to be doing testing on how we're doing. So we did a baseline 4 months ago. We're going to go out in the field quite shortly, and then we're going to go out at Christmas. So we will know how we're doing against multiple constituencies. Second, remember I talked about the inside-out strategy? Well, that's what we call activate. And our first goal is to activate the Penn State family. We're going to give the family a chance to talk and contribute to the dialogue. We've been too silent from inside. We have to stand up those channels, young trustees, others who have the opportunity to speak in a credible fashion. Then we're going to engage. And we're not just going to engage in a classic way. We're going to engage with influencers. And I'll tell you more specifically about that. It plays off the blue and white advisory board idea. But there are those who have a disproportionate voice in the conversation, who are the first people mainstream media go to for questions and comments at the New York Times and others. We know who those are. We're going to reverse engineer to talk to them to make sure that they know what we're doing. Because I can assure you that in November, the first anniversary stories are going to be coming. And we have to play backward from the first anniversary stories and try to make sure that those stories are the good ones. And then the last is amplify. We've got to be telling the good news stories about Penn State. You know, this Millennium Center that you've set up. We have to have an official launch of this. We have to do a better job of just great work by professors all over the world who are making a great contribution. We have to tell the good news stories. That's just PR 101. Anthony knows this is classic. Okay, so let's go to the specific parts of the program. And the first part of the program, as I said, is activate. You will begin to see activation next week. The Faces of Penn State rolls out next week. You may recall that our idea that we presented to you about 2 months ago was to put up about 100 faces. These are professors, these are students, these are alums, these are, in fact, people who are in public service, these are people who are in business. These are distinguished people who are absolutely the faces of Penn State. These are the new faces. And what we're going to do with these faces is put them on posters all over campus. We're going to put them up on the web. And also, these people are going to be living in the sense that they are going to be telling their own story. So here's what I, Mr. Professor or Ms. Professor, am doing in Zimbabwe and in public health. And so we begin the process from inside out. And by the way, we're also going to be doing a video with some of the faces at the football game next Saturday. So it's the beginning of the program. Second, we're going to be activating alumni. We want absolutely for parents to tell how happy they are with what their students and children's students are doing at campus. We want to be sure that we give them opportunities to write op-eds. It could be in local media, back home media kind of thing. So again, it's inside out. Third idea, and by the way, I do want to make a point. We believe strongly that paid media is something for a year from now. It is not for today. We have to earn the right to do paid media. We think there'll be more criticism of us in the short run if we try to advertise our way through the crisis. This is a BP kind of solution is not appropriate for Penn State. It is a bad use of money relative to the impact. Next, I want to talk just briefly about what we're going to do in October for the Ethics and Child Protection event that's going to be down the road at the Milton Hershey Center. It is important that Penn State participate actively. Please? It's not, it's here, sorry. It's on campus. Corrected, I stand corrected. It is an opportunity for us to engage with experts on child protection. It's an opportunity for everyone to understand how committed this university is to this problem. We do not want to dominate this event. We want to be an active participant in the event. So that's an important distinction. And it's a chance for us, again, to talk about our go-forward language. This is a key moment for us. Okay, next phase, engage. Now, the key point about engage is we have a new mantra, transparency. And we are going to go out and show the world how we do what we do. Remember I told you the Trust Barometer data? It's really important that we show how we're doing what we're doing. So when we have the Presidential Search Committee stood up, we're going to say, here's the search firm we've hired, here's the process we're going to use, Here are the kinds of candidates we're looking for. We're going to lay it all out. Second, we have an idea about what we call the Penn State governance report. We want to actually do an annual report on the steps taken to implement those items of free that you decide to enact. So we want to, in a certain way, just as John or Ken do a CSR report for U.S. Steel or Merck, this is our version of a corporate social responsibility report. Here are the 10 items that we have agreed to do. Here's our progress. We may not be at 100%, we may be at only 25% or 50% on a couple of these things. But the fact of our being transparent, the fact of our going out and saying, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's our commitment, is vital to the credibility of this institution. Next, we are going to have Rod and Karen go to New York and go to Washington and visit the national media. Again, this is something that we must do between now and middle of October, because the stories that they are considering for the first anniversary, we have to shape. And again, we have a lot of progress to report here, and we're going to absolutely participate actively in shaping those stories. We have a further idea to stand up a sort of specific set of allies, aside from Karen's idea, which is brilliant, of the Blue and White Advisory Board. There are those people who are always called by the New York Times or CNBC or the Wall Street Journal for story comment. And a good example is a guy named Jeff Sonnenfeld, who's the example of the guy on corporate governance. We have to talk to Sonnenfeld about what we've done at Penn State on board governance. We know him very well. It's a very easy thing to do, but we have to touch him, because then when he goes on CNBC, he can be saying good things about Penn State. So in a sense, we're reverse engineering. Matt Millen's another example of somebody in sports who we have to talk to. He's got the podium on national television every Sunday, and we have to be sure that he knows exactly what we've done to advance the cause. So we're reverse engineering for this national media program. Now, on the blue and white panel, we just have a couple of suggestions of people who are big names who really can help us. A person like Vartan Gregorian, who's chair of the Carnegie Corporation, is a former university president, is well known in education circles. Robert Gates is someone who was a Texas A&M president, also Secretary of Defense. These kinds of people are very important to us to get into the conversation about Penn State. In addition, we completely agree that we have to have somebody from the technology world. Someone like Ginny Rometty from IBM or Todd Bradley from HP. These are big name people in Silicon Valley. We have to have a connection into the Valley, not only for fundraising, but also because they actually have some sense of where technology is going. So we want to use those people on the Blue and White Committee. Now, Mark absolutely talked accurately about social media. I would say that our progress site is a good first organizing concept, but that's all it's been so far. Now we have to put our foot on the gas pedal. We have 4 ideas for social media. The first is reactive, challenging the negative. And it's particularly important when you have something like ESPN.com that drives conversation on Twitter and Facebook. And you can see the bounce on Twitter. As soon as ESPN posts, boom, Twitter goes nuts. So our theory is when there are specific factual issues on which we can engage, Spanier, whoever, you know, those things that we feel as if we ought to have some comment, accreditation, whatever those are, just short and sweet, 2-liners. The university said the following, blah, 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 and get out. Don't get into conversations and fights, but just state the affirmative. The second pillar is proactive. We have 3 or 4 what we call issue pillars that we're going to invest in. So health science, philanthropy, child protection. Deal with bloggers. Make sure that they are absolutely recognizing all the work that we're doing in these areas. Third, opportunistic. So, for instance, you've got the football players wearing the blue ribbons on the back of their helmets during the games. So we actually have to take advantage of this window. You know, why are we doing this? What are we doing? Maybe a player talks. You know, so that's opportunistic. And then fourth is what we call easy wins. So we're going to stand up the Nittany Lion on social media. That person's going to have a persona, and we're going to make that person a character. And that, we believe, is a sort of easy win, just as an example. So that describes our social approach. Now, Let me bring it home with our last phase, which is amplification. One of the great things about this university is its commitment to service. And we believe fundamentally that you have so many activities, but it's never sort of been brought home to one place. So we actually did this for Nissan. We created a thing called Nissan Neighbors, because they had all sorts of different things they were doing all over the country, but nobody ever had a sense of the magnitude of what they'd done. So we have this idea of hashtag Penn State PSU serves, and so everything comes back to a place. So whether it's Thon or Council of Lionhearts or Urban Service Experience, all these things we have to add up into something that says Penn State is different because the mantra here is service. We even have this idea maybe of a National Service Day. We can do that next year when we have a little bit more time. But the idea is aggregate all of the good that you are doing in a single place. We're going to have it up on your website. We're going to also have it up on Progress, and we're also going to have a special site about PSU serves. Okay. We also are going to do sort of classic public relations in the sense of we have 4 or 5 storylines. Penn State researchers get a $1 million green light to create nano-cancer treatment. You know, how are we going to use that kind of storyline? Well, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, or, you know, get something in Atlantic Monthly. Do something also posting it up on YouTube with the researcher, and then point bloggers to this outstanding research team. 14 freshmen start their Penn State experience studying sustainability in Jamaica. How would we use that? Well, hometown newspaper, one kid maybe from Cleveland, get a story in the Plain Dealer. Do something on Huffington Post with a slideshow of the kids working in Jamaica with locals. We also can do something on Flickr by putting up the students' personal photos from the trip. Again, this is PR 101, but we've got to stand up this kind of activity. So if I could summarize what I've been trying to tell you, it is time to turn to the offense. It is time that this proud university begin to tell its story again. There are going to be hard days, but you're going to run a parallel path of defense, which we've been doing, and offense, which we have now stood up. So with that, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to work with Penn State.